I think that's all working fine. So good afternoon, everybody, from not too cold, not too freezing cold. Galashiels out this morning for a long walk, which was most enjoyable. So just carrying on with the next part of this, looking at the testimony of Dr. Richard Leo in Brendan's post-conviction hearing. And we've skipped the bit just after lunch where there was some confusion over exhibit numbers, and so that was all sorted out. But we hear a lot of Tom Fallon, and me certainly, I wouldn't give Tom Fallon the time of day. Hi, Becca. The more we've got to discover about Tom Fallon, the more we realise what a most unethical person he is. Hi, Millbilly. Hi there. Yep. So anyway, here's the next part of the testimony from Dr. Leo. And as I say, we've skipped from, just in case you're interested, we were at page 141, so we fast forwarded to page 147, halfway down the page. And this is when we start again with Steve Drizzen. And of course, he asked Dr. Leo, I'd like to begin this afternoon by talking about your analysis of whether there are psychologically coercive interrogation tactics in the interrogations in Brendan's case. But before I do, let me ask you this. What were you provided with to review for your testimony in preparation of your testimony today? And so I was provided with multiple CDs and DVDs. Well, at least Dr. Leo gets provided with DVDs and CDs of Brendan Dassey's interrogations on February 27th, 2006, March 1st, 2006, and May 13th, 2006. And later, I believe, Mr. Kelly's, I think it should be O'Kelly's, DVDs of Mr. O'Kelly's interrogation of March 12th, 2006. That would be Michael O'Kelly, and that would be May 12th of 2006. Correct. I was also provided with supplemental police reports, Wisconsin DOJ criminal investigation reports, Calumet County Sheriff's Department reports. I was provided with trial transcript. I was provided with news stories, media stories of the Holbach murder. I was provided with a report by Joseph Buckley of Reed and Associates. I was provided with a report by Lawrence White, Dr. Lawrence, a professor, and it is Dr. Wright, a Professor Lawrence Wright. I've also seen a report by Dr. Robert Gordon. Okay, in addition to the news stories and broadcasts that you cite in your affidavit in this case, did we send you additional news media accounts from television news in the case? I believe you did. Okay, now I'm going to focus specifically on the interrogation beginning February 27th. Just generally a couple questions. When you looked at the videos in this case, did you observe some psychological interrogation tactics? Yes. Did you observe some psychologically coercive tactics? Yes. And can some of these tactics that you observed, if repeated over and over, become psychologically coercive? Yes. So in and of themselves, some of these tactics may not be psychologically coercive, correct, but if repeated over and over, they can become psychologically coercive. Answer, in combination with other tactics, yes. Okay. Now let's start with the February 27th questioning of Brendan Dassey at the school. That's Mishicot High School. Okay. Now, the officers who there's been testimony in this case that this conversation was an interview. Okay. Question. What is the difference between an interview and an interrogation? Answer. Well, an interview is usually not accusatory and it's more open-ended. And the questions that are asked are not asked to elicit incriminating statements. The interview will always be non-custodial. There's no requirement to give any Miranda rights during an interview. The goal of an interview is not to get a confession or self-incriminating statements, but to get general and specific information that assists in an investigation. You won't see in an interview interrogation techniques. Question. And when you reviewed the February 27th questioning, Brendan Dassey, what was your opinion about whether or not it was an interview or an interrogation? Crater Face has to butt in. Okay. I'm going to interpose an objection since the fruits of this interview were not played in front of the jury. The court. Mr. Drisden, why are we concerned? No, if you just want to keep Brendan locked up where he is, no, of course you're not concerned. But of course, Steve, we're concerned because Dr. Leo has testified and will testify that psychologically in coercive interrogation tactics from one interrogation, if repeated in subsequent interrogations, can have a psychologically coercive effect, and many psychologically coercive interrogation tactics, as well as contamination, were introduced in the February 27th interrogation. Finally, Fox. All right, I'll overrule the objection. Steve carries on. Do you remember the question, Doctor? Can you repeat the question? Yeah. When you reviewed the February 27th interrogation video, interrogation audio tape at Mishicot High School, did you conclude that it was an interview or an interrogation? Answer, an interrogation. And why? Because they were using interrogation techniques and they were seeking to elicit incriminating statements. And so it looked like they not only were they using interrogation techniques, but they were trying to accomplish what is the goal of an accusatory interrogation. Okay. And in your experience, is it common for police officers to portray interrogations as interviews? Answer, what a surprise. Yes, very common. Question, okay. Is there a legal significance to this distinction between interrogations and interviews? Yes. What is that significance? Well, the significance would be that if it's an interview, then there's no requirement for Miranda. If it's an interrogation in custody, then of course Miranda is required. And there may be other constitutional issues triggered as well. Okay, Richard, I'm going to refer you to Exhibit 315, page 1, clips 1 and 2. Okay? Yeah, hold on just a second. The witness, is it okay if I just set this right here? Go ahead. Okay, so Exhibit 315, correct, page 1, right. Clips number 1 and 2. Okay. You see what I'm talking about? Yeah. I haven't reread them, but okay, I see. Early in the interrogation, on February 27th, the following exchange occurred. Steve, now I had planned to play the audio, Your Honor, but the audio is too garbled to play. So I'm going to read these clips as they appear on exhibit number 315. They're not very long. Clip number 1, Fassbender speaking. You're a kid, you know. And we've got people back at the Sheriff's Department, District Attorney's Office, and they're looking at this now saying there's no way that Brendan Dassey was out there and didn't see something. They're talking about trying to link Brendan Dassey with this event. They're not saying that Brendan did it. They're saying that Brendan has something to do with it, or the cover-up of it, which would mean Brendan Dassey could potentially be facing charges for that. Clip 2. Again, Mr. Fassbender. We've gotten a lot of information. You know, some people don't care. Some people back there say, no, we'll just charge him. We said, no, let us talk to him. Give him the opportunity to come forward with the information that he has and get it off his chest. Now, make it look. You can make it look however you want. Okay, how would you describe the techniques that are being used in these clips? Answer. So you read 2 clips. I would describe them as interrogation techniques, first of all, and more specifically as inducements. These are the kinds of techniques that interrogators use to make somebody think that it's in their best interest to confess or to give them the information they're seeking, because there could be negative consequences for failing to do that. In the first clip, we've got a couple of people back at the sheriff's office, the district attorneys, and there's the description is that they're trying to figure out what Brendan's culpability is and whether to link him to the crime. And they say explicitly here, you could be facing potential charges. So this would be an example of either a systematic or high-end inducement. The second one repeats the second one of the 2 clips you read, repeats this issue of him being charged and suggests also that he has an opportunity to get this off his chest or come forward and get this off his chest, which is really what we meant by a low-end inducement. So these are classic interrogation techniques. They're inducements. They're conveying a high cost being charged with a murder for failing to confess, continuing to deny, and implying a benefit, implying that he might not get charged. Okay. Now, some systematic inducements are psychologically coercive, correct? Yes. Do you consider these systemic inducements psychologically coercive? Yes. I think the threatening him with facing charges and suggesting that what he says will determine or could determine whether he gets charged and is linked to this very serious crime is coercive. I think it rises to the level of an implied threat of charging if he doesn't give them what they're looking for, an implied promise or suggestion of leniency or maybe even immunity if he does. Okay, Dr. Lear, in your writing, you use the term pragmatic implication on occasion. You know what that term means. It seems a bit odd if he wrote it. Presumably he knows what he means. But anyway, let's carry on. Excuse me. Yes, it's a term for linguistics, and it conveys a very simple idea that in conversation we often imply the meanings of certain things without explicitly stating them, and it's understood contextually, the meaning what's being implied through the particular language use. It's relevant in interrogation because essentially certain meanings can be implied and understood without being expressly communicated, and in particular, oftentimes promises or suggestions of leniency or threats of harsher or higher charging or punishment are implied pragmatically in the context rather than explicitly stated, so somebody would understand or is likely to understand their meaning even if it's not explicitly said. Okay, and has this idea of pragmatic implication been studied in the context of police interrogations? Answer, it has. Okay, can you describe some of this research? Well, it's been studied in two contexts. One context has been an experimental context, where the experimental subjects are asked to read transcripts of excerpts from interrogations. And of course, in an experiment, you can vary the conditions. So you have control groups and stimulus groups, and you give different transcripts, and you analyze what the people infer from different transcripts, whether implied, whether certain things are implied promises or implied threats, whether it's understood or not, and in the various different conditions, including explicit threats and promises or other statements. So that would be experimentally based on real live interrogation. Then there's been field research of people who've confessed and analysing the transcripts of their interrogation and some case interviews with them about the meaning that they inferred from things that were stated during the interrogation implicitly rather than explicitly. Okay. In your opinion, is there any practical difference in terms of which is more coercive between a direct threat or a promise and one that is conveyed through pragmatic implication? Answer, not if the one conveyed through pragmatic implication is understood to be a threat. What really is important is how the meaning is understood, or how it's conveyed and how it's understood. And a threat conveyed through implicitly through what we call pragmatic implication can be just as powerful as implicitly as one that's been conveyed explicitly. Okay. Is the use of threats and promises conveyed through pragmatic implication a strategy that police officers use during interrogations to avoid being associated with direct promises and threats? Well, yes. You know, the police officers themselves may deny that it's a strategy that they're using, or that, in their opinion, it rises to the level of a threat or a promise. But from a behavioural point of view, the answer is yes, that we have observed that. Okay, Richard, I'd like you to turn to Exhibit 315, page 1, clip 6, page 2, clip 7. But let's start with page 1, clip. Okay? And again, I would play this, but I'm going to read this as well. Clip 6 is from investigator Wiegert. But we want to get back and tell people that, Brendan told us what he knew. We want to be able to tell people that Brendan was honest. He's not like Steve. He's honest. He's a good guy. He is going to go places in his life. But in order for us to do that, you need to be honest with us. And so far, you're not being 100% honest. Clip 7. Mark and I both, this is Investigator Fassbender speaking, Mark and I both can go back to the district attorney and say, Dassey came forward and finally told us. Can you imagine how this was weighing on him? They'll understand that. And finally, we'll go to bat for you, but you have to be honest with us. Okay? Are these other examples of what you would call systemic inducements? I think once again, that's probably a good place to hold fire. We're at the top of page 160. I'll make a note of that. And we'll, break this up into more sort of bite-sized pieces. Because now that we're getting into the actual bit that we're sort of looking forward to, as I say, Professor Leo's analysis, then that's going to be more interesting. And yeah, I agree totally, Hugh. It's one of the things that I remember in a coffee bar. I'm trying to think if the dude was with us or whether he was doing something else, but certainly myself and Stacey and Mark and Stacey said, this is how the police work. They they don't explicitly say something, but they imply something. And as you quite rightly say, pragmatically implied, an implied threat is often far more sinister than a direct one, because of course it depends on the person interpreting that threat. They might interpret as being even worse for them than what the the people are trying to suggest. So absolutely, yes, I do agree with you, Hugh. Of course. Anyway, as I say, we'll leave it there, and we'll catch up with you. Well, if not before, I don't know if I manage to do something tomorrow. I'm going to see if I can get a bit of practice done and do a couple of music videos, because it's been a while. But no promises there. But certainly Saturday, hopefully have another chat with Pete. Don't see any reason why not. So we'll catch you then. Thank you very much, and bye for now.